The first-class cabin door closed with a dry, final snap, like an invisible verdict. Everyone thought the flight would be just 5 hours of crystal glasses and leather seats. But in that very moment, something unexpected was taking shape. Something that would transform the cabin into a courtroom in the sky. Dr. Celine Archer, 40, 4 years old, settled into seat 2A, with the bearing of someone long accustomed to the summit of power. A charcoal suit, tailored to perfection, framed a slender yet resilient figure. Silver strands streaked through her hair like lightning marks of time. She did not need to flash diamond rings or luxury handbags. One slight nod was enough to convey something rare. A quiet confidence forged through years of building an empire with her bare hands. Yet to most of the passengers, Celine was nothing more than a middle-aged black woman, a guest out of place in a cabin reserved for $1,000,000 suits and the scent of expensive French perfume. The first-class cabin buzzed with chatter. In seat 2B, a portly businessman waved his arms while boasting of a closed real estate deal. In row 3, a young couple snapped photos with their champagne. Attentive flight attendants poured golden bubbles with rehearsed smiles. But at seat 2A, where Celine sat, the table remained bare. No champagne, no white linen. Not even a greeting glance. She placed a cracked tablet on the tray. The fracture stretched across the glass like a scar, yet beneath it, the screen glowed, displaying sketches of towers of steel and glass reaching toward the heavens. Her hand moved lightly with the stylus, preparing to draw another line. In her mind, she could already see the shape of a building, a monument to a lifetime's pride. And then, champagne, sir? The flight attendant's voice rang sweet, but it was directed only to 2B. Laughter bubbled with the champagne glass, while seat 2A was once again passed over, as if it did not exist. At first, Celine thought it must be a mistake, a missed beat in the daily symphony of service. But when the cart returned, placing sandwiches on trays and laying down white cloths for everyone else, 2A was once more forgotten. This time, Celine lifted her gaze. Not angry, not indignant, just a steady look, calm and unyielding, with the cold steel resolve of someone who would not allow truth to be buried. The businessman at 2B shifted uneasily, drinking down his glass too quickly, avoiding her eyes. In 3D, Eleanor Shaw, a 67-year-old with silver hair, furrowed her brow. She recognized something wrong, but, like many times in her life when injustice appeared in public, she stayed silent. Celine inhaled slowly. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Daughter, when they refuse to see you, make yourself impossible to ignore." A faint click sounded. Celine had activated the log mode on her tablet. Every detail, the timing, the gestures, the averted eyes, was carefully recorded. A ledger of undeniable evidence. She said nothing. She did not ask. She did not plead. Her silence carried purpose, sharp as a blade still sheathed. In row 3, 21, year-old student Kira Patel quietly angled her phone. She whispered into her mic, "You're watching live. She's in seat 2A and hasn't been served a single thing. Everyone else has champagne, sandwiches. This is happening right now." The viewer count ticked upward. 50. 100. 500. Comments streamed. Wait, what? Serious? Protect 2A. In seat 2C, Victor Lang, 48, leaned forward, his voice loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Some people just don't belong here, always making trouble. His words cut the air like a blade. Eleanor Shaw snapped her head toward him, lips pressed tight. Maria Delgado, a middle-aged woman fingering her rosary, murmured a trembling prayer. No one dared confront him, but all had heard. Celine lowered her stylus, clasping her hands. No protest, no explosion. She simply gazed out of the window, where sunlight blazed off the runway and set the sky aflame. Silent, but taut as a string on the verge of breaking. Flight attendant Jenna returned, this time with a strained smile. "Ma'am, would you like some water now?" Her tone was stiff, as if granting charity. Celine turned, lips pressed before parting. "I never asked for anything, and I will not beg for what I already paid for." The cabin went still. A sharp breath escaped Eleanor Shaw. In row 3, Kira whispered into her phone. "You heard that, right? She just spoke up." Live stream comments erupted. "Queen energy! This is bigger than water." Protect seat 2A. Celine raised the tablet, its cracked screen reflecting light like a blade's cold edge. A soft tap, and the evidence was sealed in silence. No shouting, no argument needed. And in that instant, everyone in the cabin, from the silver-haired woman to the smug businessman, to the student live streaming, understood seat 2A was no longer just a seat. It had become the eye of a storm they were now witnesses to, whether they wished it or not. The flight had only just begun. But for Celine Archer, the silent battle had already started. And this time, she was not alone. The world was watching. The engines roared, a faint tremor running through the floor of first class as the plane surged down the runway and lifted into the sky. But inside, no one was thinking about the usual 5-hour journey. The atmosphere had changed, heavy, storm-like, charged with tension. Celine Archer sat upright, her back never leaving the seat. Her hands rested on the cracked tablet, glowing faintly, its light casting across her calm face. No one knew what thoughts passed inside her mind, but everyone felt her silence was not submission. It was preparation. Cold, precise, like a blade being sharpened before battle. In the seat beside her, Victor Lang smirked. He relished seeing a black woman disregarded. His voice rose again, lower this time, but still sharp enough to be caught by the live-streaming phone nearby. This is exactly why people like her don't belong here. Always looking for an excuse to cause trouble. The words fell into the cabin like a stone breaking the still surface of a lake. No one responded. But Eleanor Shaw, the silver-haired woman in 3D, glared with fire in her eyes. She gripped her armrest tight, lips trembling, yet she held back. Maria Delgado, clutching her rosary beads, whispered under her breath, "Lord, bear witness." In row 3, Kira Patel leaned closer to her phone camera, her voice shaky but firm. "You all heard that. He just said, people like her don't belong here. This isn't just bad service. This is humiliation. The live stream numbers shot upward. 10,000, 20,000. Comments flooded. Unbelievable. Protect 2A. This is racism, Liu. Selene did not turn to answer, did not argue. She simply lifted her stylus and tapped the screen. A soft ping sounded. On the log, a new entry appeared. Row 2. Hostile passenger. Verbal assault. Her expression remained unchanged. Only the light from the cracked tablet reflected across her cheek, like the mark of a verdict yet to be spoken. Jenna Brooks, the flight attendant, returned again. This time she carried a bottle of water, her forced smile betraying unease as she tried to regain control. "Ma'am, would you like some water now, to make things smooth?" Selene slowly raised her eyes. They were cold, still as a winter lake. Her voice cut through the air, each word sharp and deliberate, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Smooth? For whom? The question struck the cabin like a hammer, a simple phrase, yet it stripped away the disguise of condescension. Eleanor Shaw gasped, her aged eyes filling with tears. Maria Delgado dropped her beads, whispering prayers louder. Kira Patel nearly shouted into her live stream. "Did you hear that? She just said, 'Smooth for whom?' Oh my God, this is history." The comment feed exploded. Viewer count soared, 50,000, then 80,000. Hashtags began to form. #smooth for whom? #seat 2A. Jenna froze. Her smile crumbled. A flicker of annoyance crossed her eyes before shifting to defensiveness. "We're just trying to keep things peaceful for everyone." Selene did not look away. Her voice resonated, calm yet resolute. "Peace does not come from pretending I am invisible. Peace only exists when dignity is respected." The cabin fell into silence. No whispers, no clinking glasses. Every gaze turned to seat 2A. Victor Lang flushed crimson. He snapped, voice harsh. "This is ridiculous. You were ignored once, that's all. Why make such a fuss?" Eleanor Shaw spun toward him, her voice trembling, yet fierce. "No, she was ignored 3 times, and you said yourself, people like her don't. Here, you are the one causing trouble." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Several passengers lowered their heads, too ashamed to meet eyes. Kira Patel swung her phone camera toward Victor, whispering with outrage. "You see this? This is the man who just spat out discrimination." The live stream climbed to 120,000, then 150,000. Comments surged. "Cancel him." Straight racism caught live. "Protect Selene Archer." Selene tilted her tablet slightly, tapping once more. Another entry appeared. Passenger 2C, discriminatory comment logged. Every detail recorded. No emotion, no shouting, no need to argue. Only the cold clarity of truth preserved. In that moment, first class ceased to be a place of champagne and leather seats. It had become a courtroom, every passenger a witness, every phone a camera. And Selene Archer, the woman once dismissed as a shadow, now held in her hands the evidence that could change everything. Eleanor leaned forward, whispering, her voice unsteady. but filled with resolve. "You don't need to do anything more, my dear. The world has already seen. You've shown them the truth." Celine gave a slight nod, her gaze still hard as steel. Inside her mind, her mother's words rang once again. "You don't need to shout. Just stand firm, and truth will roar louder than any noise." The engines thundered as the plane pierced through the clouds. But inside first class, the silence now was louder than any sound, because everyone knew a storm had truly begun, and at its very center was seat 2A. The soft yellow light on the ceiling of first class now felt harsh, illuminating every tense face. The plane had settled at cruising altitude, but the atmosphere inside the cabin was completely different, heavy, brittle, like glass waiting for the slightest touch to shatter. Dr. Celine Archer sat still, her slender hands resting on the cracked tablet. The screen flickered, recording every moment. A new log appeared. Row 2, second refusal of service. Row 2, discriminatory remark. Everything was documented with the precision of a courtroom. In row 3, Kira Patel leaned into her phone, her whisper urgent. "You all see this? This is no longer about service. This is public contempt. We are recording history." The viewer count spiked. 200,000. 250,000. Comments poured in like a flood. Queen in 2A. "This is systemic racism caught live." "Stay strong." Eleanor Shaw placed her hand on her chest, her heart pounding. 50 years ago, she had watched her friend thrown out of a movie theater simply because of the color of her skin. Now, at 67, she was seeing the same story play out. But this time, the world was watching. A tear slipped down her wrinkled cheek. Victor Lang, the businessman in 2C, grew restless. He tapped frantically on his phone, scrolling social media to distract himself. But it was too late. His face had already been captured by Kira's camera. Comments began tagging his name, attaching screenshots from LinkedIn. His identity was exposed within minutes. He looked up, meeting dozens of stares. A few passengers shook their heads in disappointment. Jenna Brooks, the lead flight attendant, returned holding a small stack of papers clipped to her board, an incident report form. Her voice strained to sound steady, but her eyes betrayed her nerves. "Ma'am, you have refused service multiple times, and this has caused tension in the cabin. I am required to note this for the captain." Gormat. The words landed like a slap in the suffocating air. Maria Delgado gasped, clutching her rosary. "She hasn't done anything. How can you call that causing tension?" Eleanor leaned forward, her voice trembling but clear. "She has never raised her voice, never caused a scene. You are the one creating tension." Kira Patel turned her camera on Jenna, whispering fiercely, "You all hear that? They are trying to turn the victim into the culprit. Document this. Share this. Don't let it be buried." The numbers surged. 400,000. 500,000. A new hashtag bloomed. #document it all. Celine slowly lifted her head. Her face was like a carved statue, calm, unmoving. Her voice rang out, low and sharp. "Document it. Document every silence, every refusal, every false accusation. Document it all. A ripple of shock spread through the cabin. Eleanor gripped her armrest, whispering, "My God," Maria murmured, tears spilling. "The Lord is bearing witness." Jenna froze, her hand trembling, nearly dropping her pen. But Selina did not waver. She tapped her tablet, logging a new entry. Accused of disruption, despite silence. The soft ping echoed like a gavel striking in court. In row 4, a man in a grey suit, Thomas Reed, an aviation lawyer, stood abruptly. His voice was firm and commanding. "I am a licensed aviation attorney. I confirm this passenger has not caused any disruption. On the contrary, what is happening here is clear evidence of bias. I will testify, if needed, in court." Murmurs erupted. Some passengers nodded. A few clapped softly. Victor Lang scowled, trying to dismiss it, but it was clear the balance was shifting. Kira Patel nearly sobbed into her live stream. "Do you all hear that? A lawyer just confirmed this right here on the flight. This is no longer just a live stream. This is legal evidence." The counter shot up. 700,000. 800,000. Comments streamed in. "She's building a case. This is bigger than one flight. This is bigger than audit this airline." Jenna Brooks faltered, stepping back. Her pale face strained into a smile, but it twisted, meaningless. Selene exhaled slowly, deeply. In her mind, her mother's voice returned. "Do not rush to prove them wrong. Live long enough, and the truth will expose them." She sat tall, hands resting firmly on the tablet. On the screen, the lines of a glass tower rose over the cracks, a symbol of strength unbroken. In the faint blue glow, her face radiated silent authority that commanded the cabin. And outside, the world was watching too. #document it all shot to the #1 trend on Twitter in just 10 minutes. The first retweet came from a civil rights lawyer. "Silence can be evidence. Watching closely." 50,000 likes instantly. Selene Archer didn't need to say another word. She had already delivered a command. Document it all. And now, not only her tablet, but millions of phones and millions of eyes across the globe were turning this flight into a living indictment. Inside the cabin, the air was as thick as a courtroom awaiting judgment. No one sipped champagne. No one watched movies. Everyone was a witness, unwilling, but undeniable. This was no longer a flight. It had become a case file, being written mid-air. The steady hum of the engines outside only made the silence in the cabin more suffocating. Every eye was drawn to row 2, where Selene Archer sat motionless, like a boulder in the middle of a raging current. The only light came from the flicker of her cracked tablet screen, recording every moment in cold precision. In row 3, Kira Patel could barely breathe. She held her phone close, whispering into the mic, her words carried across hundreds of thousands of screens. This is no longer a small incident. This is a live investigation unfolding right here in first class. Look at her. She isn't shouting. She isn't arguing. She's silent, but she's turning everything into evidence. The view count surged past 1 million. Comments poured in. This is history. She's auditing them live. Protect 2A. Victor Lang hurriedly pulled his suitcase from under the seat, pretending to busy himself, pretending to be uninvolved. But sweat had already broken across his forehead. He knew his face was now on the internet, alongside the damning words he had spoken. People like her don't belong here. One careless sentence, and a career built over decades now teetered on the edge of collapse. Eleanor Shaw never took her eyes off Celine. Her mind drifted back 50 years, to the time she herself had been stopped outside a luxury store by a guard who said she didn't fit their clientele. That day, she had stayed silent and walked away. But now, in this cabin, she was witnessing a woman who refused to walk away. A woman turning slants into a blade. Maria Delgado clutched her rosary tight, eyes closed in prayer. Then she opened them, fixing her gaze on Jenna Brooks, the lead flight attendant. Her voice trembled, but carried conviction. Child, don't destroy your career by turning your back on justice. Everyone is watching. Jenna froze. Her face drained of color. The professional smile she wore like armor had vanished. Her fingers gripped the clipboard so tightly the knuckles turned white. Every time Celine tapped her tablet and the soft ping sounded, Jenna felt as though her own heart had been stamped with a seal. Celine had not spoken further. She only wrote, drew clean lines, sketched the rising form of a tower. Against the cracked screen, it became a symbol of strength, the kind of strength that came not from shouting, but from patience. Then, unexpectedly, a new voice rose. The man in seat 4D, Thomas Reed, an aviation lawyer, stood tall, his voice ringing through the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I have practiced aviation law for 15 years. What I am witnessing here is blatant discrimination, a violation of passenger protection statutes. If necessary, I will testify to this in court. The cabin stirred with murmurs. A few clapped, others whispered. The live stream exploded, the count leaping to 1.2 million. Comments blazed. Lawyer confirmed. This isn't a flight anymore. It's a case. Victor Lang shot up, face flushed crimson, shouting, This is ridiculous. You're turning a minor issue into a trial. She's just a passenger. How could she possibly have the authority? Celine slowly lifted her head. Her eyes burned with an icy light. And in that moment, she revealed just a shard of her true identity. Her voice rang out, low but unyielding, each word striking like a hammer on steel. You're right. I am just a passenger. But I am also tasked with overseeing compliance on these flights, ensuring fairness and dignity are upheld. And I will not overlook what I've witnessed. The cabin fell into stunned silence. Jenna Brooks flinched. Victor Lang froze, his mouth open but empty of words. Eleanor Shaw whispered, My God, she's not just a passenger. On the live stream, Kira Patel's voice cracked with emotion. Did you hear that? She just revealed she has oversight authority. This is an audit in the Viewership skyrocketed past 1.5 million. A new hashtag surged. That audit in the sky, shooting into Twitter's top 3 within minutes. Jenna staggered back, her voice breaking as she spoke into her radio. Captain, we have a situation. The passenger in 2A, she... But the words faltered, left unfinished. Celine paid her no mind. She tapped her tablet again, adding a fresh line. Row 2. Confirmed regulatory oversight. Outside, the clouds rolled thick and white, like a stage set for a play written by fate. Inside, everyone sat breathless, still, realizing the truth. This flight no longer belonged to the airline, no longer to the captain. It belonged to the truth, and to the woman in 2A. Celine closed her eyes gently, letting out a steady breath. In her mind, her mother's words echoed once more. You don't need to shout. Just sit firm. The truth will speak louder than any noise. And indeed, the truth was already breaking through, not in raised voices, but in the quiet, relentless audit unfolding in the sky. First class had always been a place of quiet, of champagne glasses, and the soft chime of silverware against white porcelain. But now it had turned into a battlefield. No smoke, no weapons, only eyes, words, and the truth laid bare. Celine Archer sat still, the cracked tablet on her table glowing with log after log. Each soft ping was faint, but to Jenna Brooks, it struck like the hammer of judgment against her chest. Sweat rolled down Jenna's temple, even as the air conditioning hummed. Victor Lang darted glances around, searching desperately for an ally. But no one met his eyes. Worse, those who did looked straight at him with contempt. He had once been accustomed to respect in boardrooms, but now a single sentence from his own lips had turned him into a villain before millions watching live. Kira Patel's voice trembled into her live stream. You all heard it. She isn't just a passenger. She has oversight authority. This isn't an internal matter anymore. This is an official investigation in the sky. The numbers climbed wildly. 2 million. 2.5 million. Comments poured in. Audit in real time. She's the FAA inside the plane. Now, protect Celine. Maria Delgado clutched her pori tight, lips whispering prayers, though her eyes never left Celine. She felt it too. Something bigger than a passenger, bigger than a flight, was happening here. Then Celine stood. The quiet snap of her seat echoed, enough to make the cabin hold its breath. She lifted her tablet high, the cracked screen catching the light like a silver blade in the hands of a warrior. Her voice rang out, each word sharp, steady, unforced. My identity is no longer something to hide. I am Dr. Celine Archer, Chief of Compliance and Ethics at Sky Nova International. I hold direct authority with the Federal Aviation Administration. And from this moment, this flight is no longer just a journey. It is an official audit in the sky. A shockwave rolled through the cabin. Gasps broke from every direction. Jenna staggered back, face pale as her clipboard slipped and clattered to the floor. Victor Lang stared, his lips trembling. No, that's impossible. Eleanor Shaw pressed a hand to her chest, hot tears streaking down her face. She whispered, Thank God, justice finally has a voice. Kira nearly shouted into her phone. Did you all hear that? This isn't rumor. She just confirmed it herself. This is a real audit at 30,000 feet. The numbers soared. 3 million, 3.5 million. Hashtag #audit in the sky erupted, shooting straight to number 1 worldwide. Celine did not stop. She lowered the tablet to eye level, her voice carrying through every corner of the cabin. In this log, I have recorded every moment. 3 separate refusals of service. 1 false accusation of disruption, despite silence. 1 instance of open discrimination, each with timestamp, witnesses, and video evidence. This record will be sent directly to the FAA, and I promise every violation here will be investigated to the end. Jenna pressed herself against the wall, her hand covering her mouth. Every step of her career, every polite smile she had ever faked, collapsed at once. Victor Lang shot up, his voice breaking. This is an abuse of power. You can't just turn a flight into a courtroom." Selina turned, her eyes slicing into him like a blade. "You're wrong. You turned it into a courtroom the moment you opened your mouth. I am simply doing my duty, documenting the evidence." Murmurs rippled through the cabin. Eleanor rose to her feet, her voice trembling but firm, finger pointing at Victor. "We all heard you. No one fabricated this. You brought this on yourself." Maria's voice followed, unsteady but strong. "Justice is present on this flight, and you cannot escape it." Kira's breath caught, her eyes wet. 4 million people are watching. This isn't just a flight. This is history. Celine lowered her tablet back onto the table, her hands folding neatly over it, calm as a judge delivering the verdict. "I do not need to shout. I do not need to argue. I simply sat in the seat I paid for, and the truth revealed itself. Remember this. Dignity is never a privilege. It is a right that cannot be denied." A final ping sounded. The log entry, "Regulatory audit initiated mid-flight." The cabin was frozen in silence, each breath heavy as stone. Outside, the white clouds churned, as if the entire sky itself was shifting with the weight of what had just happened. From that moment on, this flight had ceased to be just a journey. It had become living evidence, and the entire world was waiting for its verdict. The steady hum of the engines outside could not drown out the atmosphere of judgment that filled the first-class cabin. After Celine Archer's declaration, the cabin was no longer a place of luxury, but a courtroom suspended in the sky. Kira Patel clutched her phone, her hands trembling. On the screen, the viewer count surged past 4 million. Comments scrolled so quickly she could not keep up. "Audit in the sky. This is evidence. Protect Celine." Verified accounts appeared in the feed. Journalists, politicians, civil rights attorneys. The words were clear. "We are watching." Eleanor Shaw could not hold back her tears. She whispered to the passenger beside her, "I have waited my whole life for this moment." Finally, someone stood tall and forced them to see. Victor Lang gripped the armrest, sweat streaming down his face. He lowered his head, but could not escape the cameras that caught him in secret. A comment flashed on the live stream. "Who is this man?" LinkedIn found. 1 minute later, Kira's screen filled with screenshots of Victor's company profile, buried under thousands of comments demanding his firing. In the corner, Maria Delgado whispered a prayer, her hands clutching the rosary beads that shook with every turn of events. But her voice suddenly grew firm, strong enough for nearby passengers to hear. "God is not silent. He sent a woman to force the world to face the truth. Jenna Brooks pressed herself near the galley, her face ashen. She wanted to disappear from view. Her clipboard had long since fallen, but in her mind, Celine's words echoed like hammers against steel. Dignity is never a privilege. Celine sat tall, her hands resting on the cracked tablet. Its screen cast half her face in light and half in shadow, like a judge presiding at midnight. She did not need to speak again. Her silence, after her declaration, rang louder than any scream. Then came the chime of incoming messages from passengers' phones. A young man blurted out, "My God, CNN just ran a breaking story. Audit in the sky. Passenger declares FAA oversight mid-flight." The cabin shook with shock. Phones buzzed, screens lit up. BBC, MSNBC, Al Jazeera. All reported on the flight. Hashtag Audit in the Sky officially hit #1 worldwide. On the ground, inside the gleaming glass headquarters of Sky Nova International, CEO Lauren Kim froze before the massive screen streaming social media live. She slammed her hand against the table, her voice cracking with fury and fear. How could this happen on our flight? No one knew Archer was on board. A trembling communications director replied. She booked under initials. No one recognized her. But now, the entire world knows. A market analyst added, his face pale. "Madam, Sky Nova stock has dropped 9% in just 30 minutes. If this continues, we could lose billions in market value." Lauren Kim shut her eyes, her hand clenching tight. Celine Archer, the woman they once dismissed as too rigid, was now shaking the entire company. Back in the cabin, aviation lawyer Thomas Reed leaned toward Celine. His voice was steady, resolute, carrying for others to hear. "Ms. Archer, you did the right thing. The evidence you've logged will force the FAA to act. I will testify if needed." Celine did not turn, only nodded slightly. Her eyes remained fixed on the window, where clouds swirled in blinding white. In her mind, her mother's voice echoed, "Do not rush to prove them wrong. Live long enough, and the truth will speak on its own." Victor Lang sprang up again, desperate. "This is just theater. You'll regret turning this into an incident. I have the right to sue back." Eleanor Shaw rose, her aged voice sharp, cutting through his plea. "We all heard you, and millions more heard you. You no longer have the right to deny it." Scattered applause broke out, then grew louder. Several passengers stood, facing Victor. He stumbled back, pale, sinking into his seat. Kira Patel's voice trembled through the live stream. "Everyone, 5 million are watching. I repeat, 5 million! This is a trial in the sky, and the entire world is the jury." Jenna Brooks broke down, crying in the galley, her hands covering her face. Even that sound, too, slipped into the cameras, spreading as yet another piece of evidence. Celine pressed her stylus to the tablet once more. A soft ping echoed. A new log appeared. Cabin acknowledgement. Passengers confirm discrimination witnessed. This was no longer just a note. It was a verdict. In that moment, everyone understood. When this plane touched down, the storm would not end with Jenna Brooks or Victor Lang. It would sweep across Sky Nova itself, and perhaps the entire aviation industry. Celine closed her eyes, her breathing steady. She had built towers of glass in storms, had carved an empire from nothing. But never, not once, had she felt so clearly what she felt now, that by simply sitting in her rightful place, in silence, she could make the entire world listen. First class was hushed in absolute stillness. Only the hum of engines remained, and the relentless ping of truth being recorded, line by line, word by word. So it could never again be denied. The engines outside thundered like a relentless drumbeat, but inside first class the silence was suffocating. Heavy stares, clenched hands, and the glow of phone screens broadcasting live to millions filled the air. Kira Patel leaned close to her phone, her voice trembling yet clear. 6 million people are watching right now. The whole world is witnessing this. Comments poured like a flood. FAA must act. Audit this airline now. 2A is history in the making. Celine Archer sat motionless, her hands still resting on the cracked tablet. She did not need to speak. Her presence alone had turned the cabin into a courtroom. But beyond the walls of the plane, the storm was exploding. In Washington, a prominent senator posted, "No passenger should ever be disrespected because of skin color. I am watching audit the sky." Within 10 minutes, the tweet had over 200,000 likes. News networks blared red banners. Passenger reveals FAA authority mid-flight. In the cabin, Victor Lang hunched in his seat, fumbling with his phone. But every notification cut deeper. "Is this you? What did you say? Your company needs to respond." Each message was a dagger to his fractured reputation. His arrogance was gone, his eyes vacant and lost. Eleanor Shaw leaned toward Celine, her voice trembling but proud. "You've spoken for all of us, for everyone who was ever belittled and forced to stay silent." Maria Delgado whispered, no longer praying but swearing an oath, "We stand with you." Jenna Brooks stumbled back into the aisle, her face pale, her eyes swollen with tears. She tried to speak, but only managed, I didn't." Celine raised her gaze, meeting Jenna's eyes. That look pierced through every mask. Her words were calm, steady, but cut like glass. "You chose not to see me, but the world is seeing you." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Kira whispered into the live stream, "You all heard that? My God, that line." The feed exploded. "This will go down in history." No, she doesn't even need to raise her voice. Grace and fire. The viewer count soared to 7 million. A renowned civil rights lawyer posted a reaction video. "The composure of 2A speaks louder than any speech. This is a lesson for the entire system." It was shared hundreds of thousands of times within minutes. Inside the cabin, aviation lawyer Thomas Reed spoke firmly. "Ms. Archer, what you are doing has the power to change the entire industry. I've fought many cases, but never have I seen a record built mid-flight with millions of global witnesses." Celine nodded slightly, her eyes never leaving the tablet, where a new log appeared. "Global witnesses confirmed." Suddenly, Victor Lang jumped up, his voice breaking. "You don't understand. I just misspoke. Everyone is exaggerating this." Eleanor Shaw stood tall, her aged voice carrying louder than the engines themselves. "No, you revealed yourself. And now you must face the truth." A few passengers applauded, others nodded. Whispers rose like waves. Victor trembled and collapsed back into his seat, burying his face in his hands. Kira's voice cracked on the live stream, her eyes glistening. "This is no longer a flight. This is a public trial, and 7 million people are the jury." Jenna Brooks slid back against the cabin wall, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had never felt so exposed. Every polite smile, every mask she had worn, stripped away. Celine remained silent, but in her mind, her mother's words returned. "Do not rush to shout. Just sit still, and the light will expose the darkness." She tapped the stylus on her tablet once more. Ping. A new log appeared. Cabin division confirmed. Support Verhulst's denial. Outside, the clouds rolled like silent witnesses. Inside, truth had torn through every disguise. And as the glow of the tablet reflected across Celine Archer's face, everyone understood. This moment would echo far beyond first class, far beyond this flight. It would reach the entire world watching. First class was no longer a sanctuary of comfort. It had become a global forum where silence turned into evidence, and justice began writing a new chapter in the sky. The roar of the plane cutting through the sky outside sounded like the growl of a cornered beast. But inside first class, the silence was no longer a simple pause. It was an indictment hanging heavy over everyone. Phones rang across rows, screens flashing. News spread faster than the flight itself. On Twitter, #audit in the sky surged to the top globally, surpassing 8 million posts. CNN ran the headline, "FAA Compliance Director Declares Mid-Flight Audit." MSNBC called it "Courtroom in the Sky." Even Fox News, divided as ever, could not look away. In New York, the stock exchange was in chaos. Sky Nova International shares plummeted 11% in 1 hour. A market analyst exclaimed on live television, "This is not just a PR crisis, this is a crisis of trust." Inside the cabin, Thomas Reed, the aviation lawyer, looked around and raised his voice for all to hear. "Do you realize what this means? The FAA will be forced to launch a full-scale investigation. I can assure you, this will be the largest case in the history of the industry." Maria Delgado whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "God has given us a witness, and now the world itself is the judge." Eleanor Shaw turned to Celine, tears glistening in her eyes, but her gaze shining bright. "You are not just sitting in 2A, you are sitting in place of millions who were once ignored." Celine Archer sat upright, the cracked tablet in her hand like sacred scripture. Each stroke of the stylus etched another line of evidence. Ping. A new log appeared. Global reaction confirmed. Stock value plummets. She did not smile, nor frown. She remained steady, as if she had anticipated this all along. Victor Lang hissed in desperation, flailing. This is a farce. No one can destroy a corporation over a few words on a live stream." Kira Patel nearly broke into tears as she turned her phone toward him. "He still doesn't understand. This isn't just a live stream anymore. This is public evidence. 8 million viewers. Global media reporting live. Who can deny this? The live stream counter soared to 9 million. Comments erupted. Cancel Victor Lang. Audit Sky Nova. 2A is the revolution. Jenna Brooks trembled near the galley, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. Years of service flashed through her mind. Forced smiles, scripted courtesy. And now it had all collapsed because she overlooked a passenger 3 times. She covered her face, tears streaming, but the cameras had already captured it. Celine raised her head, her voice deep, slow, each word dropping like stones into still water. A flight may be forgotten, but justice will not. I remained seated, yet the truth stood up on its own. The cabin fell silent. Some passengers wept. Eleanor Shaw began to clap, joined by others. The applause spread, uneven but resonant across the space. At Sky Nova headquarters, CEO Lauren Kim stood frozen before a massive screen showing the live stream of Celine revealing her identity. Executives panicked. Phones rang incessantly. An advisor whispered, "We've lost $2 billion in market value this afternoon alone. If the FAA formally intervenes, the consequences will be catastrophic." Lauren clenched her fists. She had always known Celine Archer as a woman of strict principle, but she had never imagined that one woman's silence could bring an entire empire to its knees. Back in the cabin, Victor Lang buried his head in his hands, desperate to hide from the cameras. But it was too late. His identity was already a trending scandal. One viral comment, with tens of thousands of likes, read, "He once signed million-dollar contracts, but now he's just Exhibit A of #audit in the sky." Celine tapped her tablet. Ping. A new log appeared. Passenger 2C. Reputation collapse documented. Kira Patel's voice cracked as she spoke into the live stream. 10 million, my God. 10 million people are watching. This isn't a flight anymore. This is a public verdict for the entire airline industry. Eleanor leaned toward Celine and whispered, "You've turned silence into thunder. We never have to be silent again." Celine gave a slight nod, her eyes unshaken. In her mind, her mother's voice echoed once more. "You don't need to prove them wrong right away. Truth is patient. It will rise when the moment comes." Outside, the clouds parted, sunlight flooding into the cabin. The rays caught the cracked tablet, where Celine's sketched towers rose tall above the fractures, reaching higher, stronger. First class was no longer just a section of the plane. It had become the center of the world. And Celine Archer, the woman once ignored in seat 2A, had become the figure forcing an entire industry to bow before justice. The faint ping from Celine Archer's tablet echoed through first class. But this time it sounded like a gavel striking wood. A new judgment had been logged. Global collapse of trust under documentation. The air in the cabin was thick like smoke. Some passengers held their breath, others clasped their hands in prayer. But everyone knew they were sitting in the eye of a storm that would be remembered in history. Kira Patel whispered into her phone, her voice trembling yet electric with excitement. 11 million people are watching live. The FAA just released an emergency statement. They will launch a formal investigation the moment this plane lands. The live stream exploded. Comments poured in. "This is history. Audit in the sky confirmed. Justice at 30,000 feet. Victor Lang slumped forward, his face buried in his hands. His phone screen lit up with alerts. His company had issued an emergency statement announcing his suspension. His body shook, collapsing under the weight of exposure. The man who once boasted in arrogance was now a stripped figure, unmasked before millions of witnesses. Eleanor Shaw whispered, her voice heavy with emotion. For decades we had to swallow humiliation. Today, one woman sitting quietly in seat 2A has forced the entire system to answer. Maria Delgado wiped her tears, clutching her rosary. She was no longer praying for herself, but for an entire industry in turmoil. From the galley, Jenna Brooks stepped forward timidly, her face pale, mascara streaked. She clutched her clipboard like a lifeline. Her voice cracked. "Ma'am, I just want to say I'm sorry. I was wrong." Celine turned, her eyes sharp as steel. Yet her voice was calm, steady, and firm. "You don't need to apologize to me. You need to apologize to the very duty you betrayed." The words shattered Jenna. She broke down in tears. The cabin fell silent, broken only by the sound of her sobbing. Kira Patel whispered into her phone, "Do you hear that? She doesn't need to humiliate anyone. Just one sentence, and the whole world understands." Viewership jumped to 12 million. A new hashtag appeared. Justice in 2A, soaring into the global top 5, alongside #Audit in the Sky. In Washington, the FAA released an official statement. "We confirm that all evidence from Sky Nova Flight 227 will be reviewed immediately. Passenger dignity is non-negotiable." International news outlets spread the message instantly. A senator's words reverberated. "This is not just an incident. This is a wake-up call." Inside the cabin, Thomas Reed sat upright, his voice carrying with authority. "You all hear that? The FAA has officially stepped in. This flight is no longer a journey. It is now a living legal record." Eleanor burst into tears, covering her face. Maria whispered, voice quivering, "Justice has awakened." Victor Lang cried out one last time, his voice filled with despair. "You don't understand my career. I will lose everything." Celine looked straight at him, her voice calm, almost merciful. "You haven't lost everything. You've only lost the mask. The truth is what remains." Gasps filled the cabin. Many passengers nodded. The live stream ignited. "Line of the year." Truth remains. Celine Archer, history maker. Jenna Brooks dropped her clipboard, the dry thud ringing through the cabin. She collapsed into the nearest seat, face buried in her hands. But the camera caught it all, broadcasting to millions as the Sky Nova flight attendant crumbled. Celine touched her stylus to the tablet once more. Ping. A new log appeared. FAA confirmation received. Investigation imminent. The cabin fell utterly silent. Everyone knew this was the point of no return. When the plane's wheels touched down, everything would change. The airline, the crew, the passengers, and the world itself. Kira Patel's voice cracked with tears. 13 million people, my God, 13 million. This is the largest trial in history, and it doesn't need a courtroom. Celine closed her eyes, breathing steadily. In her mind, she heard her mother's words. Sometimes you don't need to shout to change the world. You just need to sit still and let the truth speak louder than the noise. Outside the window, the clouds parted to reveal golden sunlight flooding seat 2A. That light fell across the cracked tureen, where the towers Celine had sketched still rose tall above the fractures. First class was no longer a sanctuary of luxury. It had become the scales of justice, and at its center sat Celine Archer, the woman once dismissed and overlooked, now holding the balance, forcing the entire world to see. The wheels screeched against the runway as the plane touched down, the entire cabin shuddering. But no one thought about fastening seatbelts or preparing to disembark like any other flight. Every eye remained fixed on seat 2A, where Celine Archer sat tall, the cracked tablet glowing in her hand. The voice of Captain Douglas Hale came over the intercom, trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have landed safely. Please remain seated until further instructions. There are special procedures to be carried out." Those words made hearts pound faster. Everyone knew what special procedures meant. The FAA and security were waiting outside. Kira Patel whispered into her live stream, her voice choked. 14 million people. We are about to witness history. The FAA is here at the airport. Eleanor Shaw gripped Celine's hand, her aged eyes wet with tears. "You have not only changed this flight, you have changed everything." Maria Delgado clutched her rosary, tears streaming as she murmured, "Justice has landed with us." Victor Lang slumped forward, his face buried in his hands. He knew that when that door opened, his career would turn to ash. Jenna Brooks, the lead flight attendant, clutched her clipboard like the last piece of wreckage of a sinking ship, her body trembling as tears flowed unchecked. Another ping rang out. Celine logged her final note. Flight concluded. Evidence secured. The cabin door swung open. 3 figures in black suits with FAA badges stepped in, flanked by airport security. The entire cabin held its breath. Dozens of phones rose, capturing every movement. The lead official gave Celine a respectful nod. "Director Archer, we will take it from here. You have done your part." Celine nodded. She rose, the cracked tablet in her hand, her demeanor steady, like a woman walking into a parliament chamber rather than leaving a flight. She turned once to face the cabin. Victor Lang averted his eyes, but the FAA had already approached, placing his name on the list of witnesses. Jenna collapsed into her seat, sobbing uncontrollably. Eleanor and Maria rose to their feet, applauding. Other passengers joined. The applause spread, strong and resounding through the cabin. Celine lifted her head, her voice ringing out, low and resonant like a tolling bell. "Remember this. This flight was not a disaster. It was proof. Dignity is not a privilege. It is a right that cannot be denied. And today, the whole world has seen it." Applause thundered. Many wept openly. Kira Patel shouted into her phone, 15 million people are watching live. This is a historic verdict." Celine walked down the aisle, each step slow and proud. Outside, the glare of flashbulbs filled the air. Hundreds of reporters pressed forward, microphones aimed at her. Questions crashed like waves. "Director Archer, will you sue Sky Nova? What action will the FAA take? Is this the collapse of an airline? Celine stopped, turned to face the sea of cameras. Her face glowed under the lights, the crack on her tablet glinting like a scar of honor. Her voice rang out, not loud, but each word etched into the air. This is not a story about one airline. This is a story about justice. We do not punish to seek vengeance. We change so that no one will ever again be forced to sit in invisible silence. And I promise, the change begins today. The crowd fell silent for a breath, then erupted. Chants rose. 2A! 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 Shaking the terminal. At Sky Nova headquarters, Lauren Kim sat frozen before the giant screen as her advisors shouted, "The stock has dropped another 15%. Partners are pulling out en masse. The FAA is officially stepping in." Lauren collapsed into her chair. She knew. No apology could undo this. Celine had turned the silence of a single passenger into an earthquake, shaking an entire industry. Back at the airport, Celine answered no further questions. She walked through the sea of cameras, her figure straight as a silver arrow piercing the clouds. In the eyes of millions watching, she was no longer just a passenger, nor merely a director. She was living evidence, a breathing verdict, a reminder that justice can begin with silence. Kira Patel continued her live stream, her voice breaking. 16 million people have witnessed this. Remember this moment, because it does not just change one flight. It is changing the entire world. Outside, the rain had stopped. A faint rainbow arched across the sky, gleaming through the terminal's glass. Celine walked beneath its glow, the cracked tablet in her hand shining like a torch. And so, Sky Nova Flight 227, what began as an ordinary journey, landed as a verdict in history. A flight no longer a means of travel, but a symbol of justice for an entire era. The story of Sky Nova Flight 227 did not end with an incident. It became a turning point, a reminder that justice does not need shouting or weapons, but sometimes only requires one person to sit tall, remain silent, and let the truth speak for itself. Celine Archer proved that true power is not found in a title printed on a business card or the balance of a bank account, but in the resolve to protect dignity, not only for oneself, but for all those who have ever been dismissed. A cracked tablet, a few lines of log entries, a single brief statement, yet all of it was enough to shake a corporation to its core and force an entire industry to change. And now the question is no longer for Celine, but for us, the ones watching this story unfold. If one day you are ignored, treated as invisible, will you quietly walk away? Or will you choose to remain seated, hold firm to your dignity, and turn that very moment into evidence that can change the course of everything? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do not forget to hit like if you believe justice is always worth defending, and subscribe so you will not miss the journeys ahead, where we continue to expose arrogance and affirm that fairness is not a privilege, but a right for every human being. Because sometimes it only takes one person to stand or to stay seated in the right place for the entire world to listen.